How you doing, YouTube? This is Will from Will Development, and this is part 5 of my stone math series. And in this video, we're going to talk about making your stones heavier given a particular mold. I'm not sitting here saying I have zero experience making a heavier stone. I have a little bit of experience, but in general, I try to convince people to take a larger size and light. The reason is because most of the strain you're going to get from lifting a stone is going to come from just gripping something that large. For instance, if you tried to lift a 175-pound stone that was 16 inches, which is right around the calculations that a 16-inch stone should make, and you have trouble with it, if you train using a 150-pound stone that is 18 inches, so 2 inches larger, it's actually going to be harder to lift a 150-pound stone than the 175. I can almost guarantee it, because most of your strain is not from the lack of back strength. It's going to be the need to grip it, on top of the fact that the larger the stone is, the harder it is to find the center and to actually hold it in the center. Most people aren't Brian Shaw and have a giant ass wingspan. If you're like me and you're only 5'8", 5'9"-ish, and you don't have monkey arms that drag on the floor as you walk, you're gonna have a hard time gripping around a 22-inch stone. Forget the weight. It's the size that matters. However, I understand that not everybody has access to every single mold ever made. And if you took my advice and invested in an 18-inch mold, and you're a big boy and have gotten past the 240-pound mark, or 235, then you need to start thinking about making some heavier stones. But you don't really want to invest in a 20-inch mold because they're expensive, and when are you ever going to use the damn thing again, right? So that leads me into using lead inserts to make your stone heavier. I'm going to digress for a minute, but try to stay with me. If you ever watched This Old House, you realize that although the different guys who work on that show are experts in their particular field, you know, Roger is the expert at landscaping and hardscaping, things like that. You have the general contractor, and then you have like Norm Abram, who's like a woodworking expert, that sort of thing. You have the other guy who's the expert at plumbing. But all of these guys understand how to do the other one's job, just not as well. Roger, the landscaper, has to understand how to do some woodworking because every once in a while he has to use wood. But he also has to understand electricity because every once in a while he has to bury wires. But he also has to understand, you get the picture, right? Making stones is no different. Just because you're an expert in concrete doesn't mean you don't have to be an expert in anything else. I'm not sitting here saying you have to be an expert smelter or whatever the hell metal workers are called, like it's just metal workers. But if you're planning on making heavier stones, the easiest method and probably the cheapest method is going to be getting some lead, whether it's lead shot or just random lead that you find at your local wherever you get lead from. Now, I'm not sitting here saying you can only use lead, but lead's definitely going to be the easiest because you can mold lead relatively simply to just about any shape that you want. For example, Brian Alsrue of Never Say had a friend of his pour lead into a coffee can. This is perfect because finding out the volume of a cylinder is very simple, and also the fact that a coffee can is relatively spherical, so it's going to still feel balanced inside the mold. What do I recommend? I recommend just getting a basketball, honestly, digging a hole into the ground, putting the basketball in it, covering that basketball with dirt, and then cutting a hole inside the basketball, or somehow getting the basketball out of the dirt, and you're effectively making a mold in the dirt. And the reason is because you're going to then pour the lead in that hole and mold a ball of lead. You can do this with any kind of ball that you have. You know, I just use basketball as an example. That's kind of a large sphere. But you can figure out the volume of that sphere and figure out how much the lead weighs. So if you go online, lead weighs 0.409 pounds per cubic inch, meaning it's about a half a pound per cubic inch. And using this, just like we use the maximizer versus the standard concrete, we can figure out how much lead we need versus how much concrete we need. And you can figure out how much the stone is probably going to weigh. I do recommend trying to mold it into something spherical. That way, when you put it inside your mold, the mold doesn't feel sort of topsy-turvy. If you use a cylinder, it's going to give you some trouble. You're gonna you may not even feel it, but you'll know. In the back of your mind, you'll know. Now, the beauty of making a stone heavier is that it doesn't damage your mold at all. It's sort of the opposite of using a foam insert to lighten it. You're basically hanging whatever you're putting in the mold above the mold, which is beautiful because it doesn't damage the mold at all, and then you just cut the fucking string and it's done. It's a very simple procedure to do, but I will walk you through some calculations and just a quick example next time, because I don't want this video to be very long, but I feel like I covered some good shit in it. So in the 5th and final video, I will be going over how to make a stone heavier using an example from a good friend of mine, Brian Ellsworth. Well, actually, I don't know if we're good friends. I mean, we've chatted online a few times, but he seems like a good guy. I'd like to be good friends with him. So be sure to stay tuned for part 5, where I'm going to go over exact calculations and how I came up with making a 400-pound stone using a 20-inch mold. As always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or worries, leave them down below in the comment section. I will try to get back to you in a quick, concise, hopefully accurate manner. I make no promises to any of that. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, keep walking. And if you feel like it could be used to somebody, please feel free to share it. Don't forget to subscribe, that way you don't miss the 5th and final video in this series. Other than that, don't stay tuned. Then what's your excuse?